right, so welcome to the Queer Authors Table, everyone. We're going to have a lovely discussion. We've got Ashleigh Bonner here, the author of The Price of a Beating Heart.
Yeah, the advanced reader copy is out on Kindle, but the paperback is still in progress because I'm finishing edits.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And then we've got Cassandra Yorke. We've got Mary Everything here.
And you made the cover, didn't you, Cassandra?
I did, actually, yeah.
Gorgeous, gorgeous.
Thank you.
It is gorgeous. And I'm almost done with that, actually.
Oh.
And then I'm Vivian Dunn. I wrote For the Love of Many. And we're going to read passages, talk about our books, and have some cool discussions, take some questions from the audience here, which we actually have an audience, which is nice.
That is nice.
So thank you, Cassandra, for that. All right, so gosh, so this is my second time doing this. So I'm not my hosting skills are a little, they're being worked on, okay? Let's just put it that way.
No, you're doing great, actually. I think you're doing great. But...
Oh, good, good. I learned a lot from watching myself talk on the first one.
You seem like an old hand at this, actually. You seem like supernatural, super confident, in control, like more than I would be. So
very relaxed in life.
Yeah.
I got this.
Awesome. I'm highly caffeinated, so perfect.
Can't see it though. It's not showing.
All right, it must be just my demeanor. Thank you for that. Anywho, I always start, well, I started the first one by talking about self-publishing, actually, and asking you to basically why you decided to self-publish. So I guess, Ashleigh, would you like to go first?
Sure. Okay, so back when I was a kid, I actually didn't write. I started writing in 2012. What happened was I got a great comment on a research paper from my sister, and I was like, okay, maybe I'm a good writer. So I picked up No Plot, No Problem by Chris Beatty in October, like midway through October, and started it then around 2012. That was my whole journey and started writing. So when I started writing, I didn't know that self-publishing was an option. I thought traditional. Then I thought they have too much control. I like to control my own book. I want to control what happens, what goes out to the world, and the book cover. I like to control the things that I create. So then I jumped into self-publishing, and I self-published because really I just love to give the book to the readers myself. I love to know that for me there's no middle person. I also love the responsibilities of it, the obstacles, the learning, the constant learning you have to do to self-publish. You have to do everything. You have to do the book cover. I mean, or hire a professional, which I do on Fiverr.com. You have to do the book covers, the editing, marketing, promotion. You have to do, any podcasting. You have to do all of the finance, everything. And I really just love, doing the different things and being able to put on those different areas and continuous learning that comes in self-publishing, and really for me it's about I enjoy being able to control what I create, and that's for me is the best thing. So that's why I self-publish.
Yeah, I think the control aspect is huge because a lot of you have agents, you have editors, you've got with the traditional publishing, they're all going to try to fit they're thinking about selling it,
Mm-hmm.
So, which is fine, that's totally fine,
Exactly.
but their motives are different, I guess. So they're
Exactly.
coming at it at a different angle, so they might change it, so I totally get that.
Exactly. And to see, for me, that's really understandable, and I do understand why people want to traditionally publish. But when you say like my book is like this, and then it's also like that, it kind of makes it so that I can't tell a story that I really want to tell. I got to make it like Hunger Games and Doom. And but I'm like, well, where's my story? My story is neither of those stories, and I really like to really tell a story that truly expresses what I want to tell. And with self-publishing, I can do that, freely without without needing to worry about whether or not it fits into those boxes. So it's all freedom and control, and I love the responsibility.
And that's what we were talking about before, with the not how labels like put you in boxes,
Yep.
and we need the labels sometimes.
But then, like, it depends.
Yeah, we don't need to like always have the boxes. So
Exactly.
They want a story that is like the Hunger Games or like Dune, but how did those stories get started? Your story is like The Price of a Beating Heart. That's what it's like. And
exactly.
You
And
came
like,
with an original concept, and that makes them really nervous, I think.
exactly. And like in Hunger Games and Dune and 1984, those are magnificent and beautiful works. But I have my own work that I must be able to express myself, and I can't have a gatekeeper saying you can't do this. If I want to do second person, if I want to do omniscient, if I want to do 100 characters or no character or just the setting of the character, I want to have the freedom to be able to do that.
amen. I like that. So Cassandra, how about you?
Well, I debated with myself whether or not I would answer this question truthfully, but I'm already indie. I don't have an agent, so what do I have to lose, I guess? So I think the main thing that was going through my head when I decided to self-publish Marry Everything was literary agents themselves. They tend to be, in my view, which may be really skewed and horrible, they tend to be spoon-fed upper middle class chicks that went to Ivy League schools and never had to deal with discrimination, never had to deal with homelessness, never had to deal with domestic violence, never had to deal with any of the experiences that made me as a person and as an author. So my story is not likely to speak to someone who just moved into some bougie job on Broadway and sits there on this throne of righteousness, deciding whether or not my life experiences are worthy, whether or not they're worthy to be read or not, whether or not they're good. I say, screw that, dude. Like, I'm not going to let someone with a completely different socioeconomic background, a more privileged one in all likelihood, tell me whether or not my story is worth reading. So I decided that I was going to put it in book form. And if it ever got the attention of someone, that would be great. But I never had to kiss some royal signet from someone who deigned to lower it to me, if they did, which they may never do too. That was another consideration. I mean, how long am I going to have to wait to do this? Am I going to be 60? Am I going to be 80 by the time I get someone to actually acknowledge my existence? No, I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to tell it now. And while it's in me, struggling to come out, begging to be released into the world.
No, that's totally understandable. I mean, it's some people want to be traditionally published for the validation, to be validated by somebody who's quote a pro, somebody who is respectable, I guess, in the writing community. And I used to as well. I thought, oh, I think actually traditional publishing was like my goal of goals when I was in college. And it just, yeah, like you, it just changed over the years. And I realized I don't really need anybody else's validation. I'm confident in my story, and I'm willing to put myself out there alone, by myself, do the work, and just go.
Because consider who might be validating you. The people that might be validating you may not have had to struggle with any of the things that you've had to, who may have had a much easier life and who may not understand your experiences, and so may never validate you.
But see, for me, I'm not going to say that those who are traditionally published just want validation. I'm not going to say that that's their only goal. I'm not going to say that they're not courageous enough to go it alone. They have their own reasons for traditional publishing as well. But for me, it also helps me because my characters are, for one, my characters are black. There's black male, black female, all the main characters are black. Really pretty much all the characters are black. So I've also heard I really want to tell the story true. I want to make sure that the story is told from my point of view, with the struggles being a black person in America in this world, really. So I wanted to ensure that my story wasn't at all toned down. It wasn't at all any less truer than it could be. Then I was able to write it. I could put the emotions in there. I could put the struggles, but I could put other elements as well. But I could really put what it feels like for me as a black person in our world. So I was not going to have any kind of gatekeeper saying that you can't do this, you can't do that. You can't have a black woman and a black man. There's too many black people, or
Screw
either
that, dude.
exactly, or either you can't have a queer character. Why is she queer? Why? Why? She was born that way, obviously. But for me, it's just all about, I truly just want to tell the story that I have in my heart that is true to my perspective. I mean, it's not true for every black person or every queer person, nothing, but I want the freedom to tell whatever story that I want to tell in the way that I want to tell it. Now, traditional publishing, I'm not going to be like, oh, they're bad. Oh, no, I don't know anything about that. But for me, self-publishing is and will always be the way to go. Traditional publishing, if it happens, it's fine. But I love everything about self-publishing. There is no other, there is no other thing that I would want to do. Now, one book I do plan to try one book traditional publishing just to see how it works in the process, but that's it. But in self-publishing it is everything I could have ever hoped and wished for. So
It's such
for
a
me, it's just
challenge.
everything.
It's like the ultimate challenge, and I love challenges. And it like I said prior, you're putting yourself out there as what you wrote. It's coming from you, and you're pushing it out into the world from you alone. There's nobody else said, oh, this is good enough. Oh, this is, this, why don't you change this, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, we all had editors, but I mean, you have to have editors like Ashleigh. But it's such a challenge, and it is such a learning curve. Oh my God, I've learned so much from doing it. Holy shit. I have learned so much. So I just want to applaud you both for those answers, because that's awesome. And we're being ourselves, we're showing our true selves to the world, and we're doing it our fucking self. Like, we're literally pushing everything out and doing the marketing and trying to get the word out ourselves. That's why I wanted to talk to people like us. So perfect.
Though I will say no shade on traditional publishing. Do your thing. You wrote the book. You got this. You're doing the query. No shade on you though.
No, and that's hard too. That's extremely hard to do. So hats off to anyone who's gotten traditionally published and that's what they want to do. Thumbs up, awesome. But it's not.
I never wanted to judge the people, the writers that chose to do that. I was, all my judgment was headed toward the average agent that I've met, and I've never met an agent that didn't really fit the boxes that I checked. So there's where my shade goes to the agents, but not ever to an author that would decide to do that. That's cool.
So your shade is based on your personal experience,
right?
But it's probably not. I'm going to say it's definitely not every agent, every person.
Probably not. No.
Because I do actually know at least a couple of agencies that are run by queer people. So, yeah.
But it sounds like the best agent for you, Cassandra, is yourself. So,
Yeah. I'm not very good at it. I like Vivian said, it's been a hell of a learning experience, and for me, I feel like I'm failing in just about every category. But at least I don't have to pretend like I'm somebody that I'm not. I don't have to tone down my hard-won working class Appalachian ferocity, I guess. But yeah.
Actually, absolutely. And yeah, it's been literally the hardest thing I've ever done. It's been an emotional roller coaster. Oh my God. I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
I didn't even know I had those emotions, you know?
Yeah,
And
like you,
True.
yeah,
and but we're learning, you know, and we're just gonna keep getting better, you know. Obviously I'm not making $1 million right now, but you know what? Tomorrow's another day.
Tomorrow's
So
another day.
exactly.
keep
I've
waking
become
up.
a better, much better, stronger, confident version of myself just because I have to do it myself. You know, like me, I'm pretty introverted, and so getting out there talking to people is not my thing. I'm not a huge fan of humans, but um, but getting out there it really helps me. So yeah, I've spent many years just like learning about people and stuff. So it's really just makes me it forces me to become a different version of myself, a better version of
It
myself.
shows
And
you, it's showing you a different version of yourself,
exactly,
you know?
exactly,
It's
exactly.
amazing. It's been an amazing ride so far. So all right, perfect. Does anyone want to say anything else about self-publishing before we move on to our novels?
I think I have ground my axe to the sharpness I wanted. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So you're ready to cut the air with it now, right?
Right. Exactly.
Okay, then please go first because you're my guest. It's my house, and I'm the one that needs to be polite. You don't need to worry about that. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So before you start, I'm going to ask everybody, what inspired you to write this? This loaded question here.
Oh, me. Oh, geez. Okay. So
Stage right now.
I'm so worried that I tell this story too much, but so in 2004 I was working at the Ohio University Archives. It was my senior year of college. I was assigned to a project of a big band artist that had graduated my college in 1932. His name was Sammy Kaye. I came in the summer and my boss was like, I want you to recategorize sort of this collection. I want you to organize it. It was a mess. I said, okay. And he's like, and you're going to be writing his biography too. So I want you to go through all this material and I want you to learn about his trip through OU. And I want you to become an expert. I was like, okay. But as I did that, there was an experience that I wrote in the book in the early chapters where Courtney kind of becomes lost in these yearbooks and she starts to feel like it was her experience. And that is exactly what happened to me. It was really, I almost call it a time slip experience. It's beyond description. It's like it's like in the Matrix, having that thing jacked into your head and having those experiences play out, you being part of it. It's not someone telling you something. Like I was there. I went to the 20s. I was there for a month and a half. So it became really, really personal for me. I had this 1,000-yard stare most of the time. Like I would come back to my apartment and my roommate would be like, you're not here. Like you weren't there. Like you were gone. I didn't know where you were. Your body was sitting there, but you weren't. And so that was such a deeply emotional experience. It haunted me and it continues to haunt me. But in about 2013, 2014, I realized that it was haunting me so much that I needed to go back and have a happy ending with it. And that meant writing a novel. And so the minute I decided to write Mary Everything, my sky just cleared. It was sunny. I was happier. I wasn't as haunted anymore. And it was then I was like, I need to tell this story to the world. The world needs to hear this, or I am never going to rest in my grave. So
That's amazing. And I've had those experiences. So it's kind of like this strange, I wouldn't say I was there, but that like nostalgia, you know, there's a certain nostalgia you feel when you just see these weird things that are not from your time. Like, Ashleigh, have you ever had anything happen like that where you see, it doesn't have to be from the 20s or the 30s, but
Not that specifically. I've just had more like for me, I've sometimes I know that things are gonna happen, and so that's more of mine. Mine is more future oriented, not past oriented. But I've definitely had the experience where I'm like, this is about to happen, and then it happens, and I'm like, okay, I understand it. But so for me, it's not past oriented. But yeah, something like that, definitely in that spiritual realm, in that bigger universe realm for sure.
it's funny how our books kind of, follow our personal experiences. I mean, that makes sense. Like, you're in the future, so you wrote a book about the future, and I hope it doesn't come true. Oh, I didn't finish it yet, so, but and then we wrote about the past, me and Cassandra and I. So it's weird how time is just not what we think it is. So
Exactly.
yes. All right. So yeah, do you want to, Cassandra, would you like to set the scene that you're about to read, or the passage that you're about to read? Do you want to set us up a little bit before you read?
Sure, yeah. So what is happening? This is chapter 4 in Act 1. And what is happening is that Courtney has just encountered these yearbooks. And so she's having these really surreal time slip experiences, and she's having these really deeply emotional kind of nostalgic flashbacks. And so in the midst of that is she goes to get lunch, and she's getting lost in her own past, which you come to find out wasn't really meant to happen. That past wasn't. And so she's getting lost in her childhood and the sort of terrible things that happened to her as a kid. And she's having these horrible flashbacks. And in chapter 4, this is when the world of the yearbooks, the world of the 20s, starts to sort of mesh itself in with Courtney's waking reality. And Courtney starts to lose that sense of, well, it was just a yearbook. It's not anymore. She sort of starts to lose the sense of what is what's real and what's not.
Yeah, and I love how you did this. So
Thank you.
Please read.
All right. So the flavor quote at the top is from a professor late in the 1880s who is describing some of the processes that happen with what's called versology. And it sort of hints at what's happening with Courtney. Displaced persons sometimes find themselves phasing between realities, a process entirely beyond their control. Before the 17th century, superstitious folk attributed this to witchcraft or demonic intervention, but the science of versology has discovered a very simple mechanism behind this strange phenomenon, that of resonance caliber. Individuals with especially high resonance caliber are liable to distort and weaken versal barriers, especially when those barriers are acted upon by outside versal forces, such as conjunctions and various transits. Hint. The mechanism is not unlike a magnet with a magnetic field. Some magnets are stronger than others and thus exert a more powerful influence on their environment. However, this is a difficult phenomenon to observe in nature, as most versal barriers are impervious to a resonance caliber of 6 or less, and persons with a resonance caliber above 6 are exceedingly rare. So rare, in fact, that scholars can definitively credit perhaps 5 or 6 individuals having such abilities since the time of the Norman Conquest. Professor Vivian Holloway, Collected Lectures on Versology and Applied Versal Theory, 1889. 11:33 a.m. I find myself walking back down Court Street with a paper bag and a cold drink in my hand. I have some vague recollection of having gone in somewhere, ordered a salad, and left, but I don't think I was there to witness that firsthand. I must have been watching reruns of childhood when that happened. So now I'm back in the blinding summer sun, headed for the middle of campus. It's time to dispel this gloom. Out comes the iPod, on goes Spitalfield. I need Texas with a $sign today. A deep breath and I shiver. The opening chords hit hard and drive away the bad vibes. The crosswalk is the busiest place in town any time of the year, and even if Braddock has a fraction of the people in summer, it's still bustling. As I'm coming up, I spot a girl approaching from my left. She's ghostly pale like me, with auburn hair cut and a short bob around her soft jawline. The most striking thing about her is her narrow, almond-shaped eyes. I've always thought chicks with eyes like that are really cute. They catch mine as I approach, and there's a kind of click. Two people in a crowd with matching energy. She greets me with a narrow, witty smile. I return hers in my usual unintentional way, soft and genuine and a little bit sad without ever meaning to seem that way. And we stand there for a minute, waiting for the traffic to clear. Say, is it going to be dry like this all week? She asks. I wish I had a better answer ready. I think so. I haven't really checked the weather. Why, I sure hope it is. She stares back across the street at the shade of college green. Anything I hate is rain in the summer. Roll my eyes in agreement. Ugh, totally. I sneak a look at her. She's wearing a brown bell-shaped hat, the kind that were popular in the 1920s. She's wearing a 20s style dress too, green, knee-length with a round cut neckline and loose cap sleeves. She's even wearing old-fashioned brown stockings and brown heels. It catches my eye and I stare for a second or two. It's a hot day for stockings, especially the old-fashioned silk kind like that. And her shoes are really retro, like old church grandma shoes. She must shop at that vintage thrift store all the way up at the far end of Court Street. It's the only place around here where you could get clothes like that unless she goes thrifting in Columbus. She's standing here next to me, watching the street, not self-conscious at all, like she wears stuff like that every day without even thinking about it. Then she looks at me, glances away, looks at me again a little longer. Her eyes linger on my top and on my legs, and she looks away again, blushing. I've always been a little bit empathic, and I can feel curiosity in her glance. And attraction? Nah, it can't be right. Girls are never into me. Maybe I look too preppy, I don't know. I'm a D&D nerd, raised on video games from the age of 5, but because I wear an Abercrombie hoodie or Hollister shorts or flat iron my hair, people assign me a whole package of expectations. Courtney is a bitch. Courtney's stuck up. Courtney's a backstabbing gossip. Courtney's rich. Courtney's heterosexual. Look, I'll be honest with you. I'm gonna have a hard time living up to all of that. Maybe not the bitch thing, because yeah, I'm probably a bitch, but the rest of it, sorry, no can do. The traffic finally stops from the other direction. I give her one last smile, which she returns warmly, and step onto the street. A few quick steps take me to the other sidewalk. I stop and look at my slender fossil watch, making a pretense to turn in her direction again for one last look. She's awfully cute, and I love her chic vintage style. I wonder if she'd think I was creepy if there's nobody there. I glance around to see if she took off in another direction. Nothing. There are plenty of people around, walking dogs, wearing flip-flops, riding bikes, but no girls with vintage clothes. She's gone. It's like she was never there. But she totally was there. I talked to her. Unless I'm finally losing it. I rub an eye with the heel of my hand, not really caring that I just stamped dry mascara on my skin. Maybe I need to get out more. Maybe I need friends. I stand on the busy sidewalk for a moment, completely disoriented before remembering that I was looking for a place to sit down and eat my salad. But even as I make my way on the college green and up toward the Civil War statue, looking for a place to sit, I can't get that girl out of my head. Not just because she was cute. Something about her, that weird click when we saw each other. Maybe I'll see her again. I shove a straw through the lid of my drink. Nobody just vanishes. I wish she could just disappear. Though I guess if you wanted to disappear, this would be the place to do it. Outside the city limits, the nights are dark and old, and people who vanish are never seen again.
All right, wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great scene to read.
Thank you.
Yeah, the last line was amazing. I loved it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Very foretelling. Very foretelling. I've been reading your book, which I'm sure you know. As soon as I started reading, the voice just like jumps out from the page, into my face, and I'm just seeing this chick. She seems a little neurotic. She's hilarious. And the voice is just so pronounced and strong and very characterizing and very distinct. And I just was wondering, does that come naturally to you? Or did you have to force yourself into this character that was in your head or whatever? What was the process with this? How did this come about? Is it easy for you to write?
I would say that if any character in the book or any character that I've ever written was easy to slip into, it was Courtney, because Courtney was kind of a reflection of me. in college. She is a snapshot, a place in time, 2004, me. Um, I I did have to revise a bit to make sure that because when you're insecure, you use big words, you're flamboyant, and that's the first draft thing, and then you come back over that. But I have a thing prepared to read if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
As I've probably mentioned to you and talked about a lot elsewhere, Marry Everything began with an experience I actually had while working in my college archives in the summer of 2004. That experience still haunted me almost 10 years later, and it was that need for catharsis that led me to working on what will become the final published version of Marry Everything. Part of me was still stranded in the 1920s, and in order to make sense of just everything, really, I had to go back to where it all started, college in 2004. So this was a time travel story right from the start. Originally, I'd been thrown into the 1920s without ever expecting it, and to make sense of this experience by writing this novel, my journey had to start with traveling back to 2004. Put simply, Courtney is me, my alter ego. She's got a lot of what I would consider my best assets, my humor, my wit, my brains, my spiritual strength, but she's also got all my trauma and ghosts and fears and grudges. I was able to give Courtney everything I wanted to be at that time. She's the pretty preppy chick that I wanted to be back then, but I also use her to explore other ideals, like the idealized childhood I'd want for myself if I could choose. That's where the whole displaced thing comes in. She's got all my good qualities, a lot of my bad ones, a few items from my college wish list, like physical beauty, a certain lifestyle, how she comes off, and most importantly of all, a chance to attain things beyond my reach, the idealized youth in another time and place. She's me, Cassandra, armed for the ultimate quest, a journey back in time to a parallel universe to win the perfect life. So she's always my point of origin in the flapperverse, my true north. Slipping into Courtney's skin is easy and comfortable, like a cozy hoodie you've had for longer than you can remember. And she's my vehicle for exploring this increasingly strange, complex world where you can fix everything that's ever been broken in your life, but where your enemies are all idealized too, and where the stakes are so much higher. As a side note, I think it's funny that my friend Dave, who I co-authored a Marry sequel with, a crossover sequel for both of our novels, actually calls me Courtney more often than he calls me Cassandra, and usually doesn't even realize he's doing it. The same thing happens with other people in the Flapper Covenant Discord. They do the same thing. There were times late in writing Marry when the work got really heavy, when I became Courtney so thoroughly that even my wife noticed. She was just like, "You're Courtney." It wasn't even weird. Honestly, it's a huge compliment when that happens. I always intended for Courtney to be cooler and prettier than the girl sitting in front of the keyboard writing the story. That said, I've actually found it increasingly easy to slip into other characters with narrative viewpoints like Sadie, Mary, Sadie, Mary, or Hazel, and in the upcoming novel, Nettie. I guess that happens when you're part of the Covenant.
Right. So I have a follow-up question to that. First of all, you are fucking beautiful no matter what.
Thanks.
It makes sense that this voice is so strong and just like overpowers. Like, I mean, the other voices are great too. Like they stand on their own as well. I'm not trying to knock any of them, but Courtney is just like bam, 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 and so it just comes naturally to you, and it's strong in you. So you definitely get that on the page. So that's when people are writing, that's something to think about. If something's easy for you, it's not easy for everybody else. So just push into it sometimes, and make that part of your character, part of your book, and it'll just be stronger that way. And my follow-up question before we go to Ashleigh would be, was it difficult then to dip into the other voices, into the other characters?
Not once I really got a feel for who they were, not really once I got a grip on them. I think that pretty early on in the process, it got pretty easy. And so I was able to kind of just snap into Mary or snap into Sadie. Like, it was just a tweak in the language, and that was it.
Yeah, just kind of inhabiting their space and getting familiar with that, and then it just comes naturally after a while. Yeah, I feel that.
I would say that Sadie, I don't know if I've mentioned this to either of you, but I had written 50 or 60,000 words of this story when Sadie came to life and when she was introduced, and I had to scrap that whole thing because Sadie took over the fucking draft. She took over everything, and she just became so explosive. I was like, this isn't gonna work. So I had to scrap it and start over.
Interesting.
How did Sadie differ from Courtney I mean, I know they're different, but why do you think that Sadie took over the novel? Do you think that Sadie was supposed to be the main character, or do you think that why do you think she was eclipsing Courtney?
Because I think it was the space that I had constructed for her. It was the space I expected her to inhabit, and she was so much bigger than that space. It was kind of an incidental thing, like, oh yeah, I guess at this point in the draft, I need to introduce Courtney's best friend, and Sadie was like, "You mean me?" And she just came and just exploded that box that I had for her. So I had to rewrite the story to accommodate the size of that personality, and I am so glad that she emerged like she did, because writing her has been so fun. And of course, you can't write a character like Sadie without falling for her a little bit too. So that was fun too.
I definitely fell for her. I have a crush on her for sure. All right.
She gets that a lot. I hope that doesn't sound like bragging, but she does.
She's just very sweet, but like there's this like unbreakable core to her and this power. It's a wonderful character. So
thank you. And of course, I'm spoiling something, and I will shut up so Ashleigh can go. I'm so sorry. I just want to say that I'm going to say fairly soon, in my whatever I show off of the second novel. One of the first things that you discover is that Sadie had polio, and it was her powers that helped her overcome that polio. And so having fallen ill with polio at 13 made Sadie who she is. And so that, if that's any perspective for you, I will shut up now and let Ashleigh. She has so much to say, and I have so many things to ask her. So,
well, we're not done with you.
Yeah, it's still your turn.
We're not even close. Ashleigh, do you have another question for her?
Nope, I'll let you ask the next one.
Okay.
I'll just piggyback if I have any questions.
Okay, so when you did introduce the polio part backstory, oh god, that just characterized her so much for me. That was excellent. All right, so oh yeah, so I wanted to know about those. In the beginning of each chapter, you have those kind of little blurbs, and they look like they're coming, or they sound like they're coming from like a newspaper or a book somewhere, or the library somewhere. And I even actually Googled some of the people to see if they were real. And then I was like, oh duh, Vivian. So, because in my book, a lot of the people were real people. So I kind of just assumed, and that they had such a authoritative tone to them as well. They were a very different voice from Courtney or Sadie or Mary. So I was interested in learning kind of like how this process came about. And because there are a lot of mentions of like psychics and tarot, blood covenants, other esoteric themes and subjects, did you always have, so I have a two-part question. So why did you choose to do it that way? First of all, instead of incorporating it into the plot, why did you choose to have it in the beginning of each chapter? And also, did you have to learn about that stuff in order to get your research ready for making up some of what you made up? Because you're blending some truth, like some actual arcane theory with made up stuff, with fiction stuff. So I was just wondering, did you already know about the occult, or did you have to learn and go back, or kind of a bit of both? So take it away.
Okay, so as to the first part of your question, why I decided to do it that way. I don't know if either of you have ever read Erica Johansson, her Queen of the Tearling series. Very atmospheric fantasy. And Ashleigh, I would actually kind of recommend it to you in particular because it is a near future based fantasy. So the world becomes really post-apocalyptic. It becomes really dystopian, and then they go away to this new world that you discover 2 books in that it's a new world kind of through interdimensional stuff. But she uses quotes like that at the beginning of her chapters, and they make it so atmospheric. And I was like, I've totally got to cop that style. I've totally got to like rip Erica Johansson off and do that myself because that is amazing. But I actually wrote an answer to your question about the esoteric stuff. I just said,
I'm glad you wrote your answers out because I don't. I just make shit up as I go along. So please, sorry.
Oh no, but both of you like asked such awesome questions. Like I couldn't not answer it. Like I was like, I am not gonna pass this up. These chicks wrote awesome questions. And I said, I guess if there's a short answer, it's atmosphere and glimpses of the world emerging in the narrative. But I've been a witch pretty much my whole life, since I was about 14 anyway. A lot of the metaphysics stuff is pretty natural for me. It's kind of part of my whole headspace. The quotes you mentioned are a lot of different things. Me trying to create atmosphere, but also trying in my own sloppy way to introduce the forces that move this world. Courtney is your standard college girl in the early 2000s, and she's got nerdy interests that include a few witchy ones like tarot. A lot of the things in Mary are meant to be the stark contrast between our world, i.e. Courtney's world, and verse Tranquility Dawn. And Courtney's the vehicle for a lot of that contrast. You put her, a fairly normal looking college girl that happens to read tarot, next to a world where a World War I combat sorceress can use so-called modern arcana developed on the Western Front to take down a street thug. And it makes the world's special vibe that much clearer for the reader. I don't know how far you got in the book or whether you got to the scene I just mentioned, but eventually those oblique references to occult stuff blow up in kind of a literal sense into the world's special magic system. That magic system takes a tiny bit from what we think of as occult metaphysical stuff, but it takes a lot more from fantasy and D&D and role-playing games, and even more from real science. I took a lot of pains to read as many outdated scientific and medical books as I could get my hands on, trying to make this turn of the century soup of emerging science, pseudoscience, real cutting edge physics, and D&D magic. I wanted a magic system that felt uniquely 1920s and was grounded heavily in how people saw the world. It's magic that's more science than spells, and I really wanted to make something that was intriguing, almost endearing in a nostalgic kind of way, but logical to its roots. I wanted it to make sense and to be deeply realistic and believable.
Well, you definitely succeeded because it sounds magical and real and fantastical. I don't even know if that's a word, but I just made it one. But it's also kind of like, you can tell like some of it is a little, you know how like in the old medical texts, like they would say, you know, if you have, I don't know.
They wouldn't say congestion, they would say catarrh, or they wouldn't say high blood pressure, they would say hypertension, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and then they would give you some weird ass remedy for it, you know, like put a tick on it, which actually does help with some things. But anyway, put a leech on it. It had that kind of old vibe, you know, to the magic as well. So that was nicely done. That was nice. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that. I laughed at it a couple times. I'm not quite finished, but I have about this much to go.
Oh yeah, then yeah, you've experienced a lot of the arcane stuff then.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, I'm in there.
Okay, so like Cassandra, I was just blown away by how you made her magic. You were like Versology and Caliber, and like how you seamlessly weave in 2004 and then 1921, and then you have the sort of like the meta kind of space where we see them. She's showing her the textbook of 1922, and then she's like, "That's you," and "That's me." Right? Actually, no, Sadie's the one who recognized her, but I love how
it was crazy.
Yeah, she was like, but and then the fascinating thing for me was that Cassandra, Courtney didn't recognize her own stuff in the book, even though I think she had gone through the whole thing. She didn't recognize herself like a year later. That was fascinating. I was like, okay, cool. And then so like, how did you know that like one part worked and another part didn't? How did you know like what parts of the magic system to leave out, and then what parts to to make stronger or to lessen, or what parts did you think might be lost by the readers? How did you like determine what was needed, what was not was needed, and what would really just boost the system?
It was sloppy, it was messy, and it was imperfect, and I failed utterly. I I ended up cutting a passage that I showed to a friend recently, and he's like, God, that passage is so powerful. You should have kept it. And I'm like, oh, now you tell me a year later. And but it was, and then of course I published, and then I was going through for an entire year on Amazon, like reading my own stuff, like, oh God, I messed that up, or oh God, this thing should be more emphasized. And
Like
so
published?
once it was published, I've revised my own work numerous times, and that's one of the things I love about self-publishing is that I'm shameless. Like I will revise my own shit to make it better. Like screw that. I want it to be. I want that diamond to be polished.
Absolutely.
But
Okay.
a lot of what ended up in the story, a lot of the things that I emphasized, the way that Courtney felt when she was phasing, for instance, that emerged in that hellish last 72 hours before I published. That was me filling in like, oh, I guess I need a whole other chapter here. Or I guess I'm going to introduce this whole other character here. And then sometimes I was making changes later on. So it was really inexact. It was really messy and sloppy. And I would not recommend doing anything that I did the way that I did it, because my method.
So you're not gonna do that for the second one.
Oh no, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be perfect. I'm going to have everything lined up ahead of time, and I will absolutely not make any changes at all after I publish.
Oh wait,
I
sorry.
mean, you can if you want. It's your book.
Yeah, you can. But so when you published, did you just like publish way too early? Like, did you mark it after you published and then changed it
I
and had people read it?
I think, and people did read it and people did buy it, and then I was horrified when I realized, like, oh God, these formatting problems have been in the book. They're reading a book that looks like it was maybe a 10th grade research paper. I had this really neurotic thing where I my brain was doing this to me. It was like grabbing my skull and saying, "You need to publish now."
Yes.
And it was this irresistible compulsion. Um,
I did
like
that
like
too.
some people find eating human flesh is an irresistible compulsion. It was for me, like publishing that early was, and then I realized all these things were wrong, and so I was changing them 6 months in. But more or less now, it's
No, I feel kind of dumb because I haven't changed anything, and I'm like, shit, maybe I should, like all like the bad reviews I've gotten, like shit, maybe I should just no.
you haven't done anything wrong. You did it right. You are the role model that I should be following.
No, I had that same thing in my skull telling me, "Fucking publish this now. You got to publish this right now. You got to do it right now. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it." And then I did it, and then I was like, "Ah!" But at least I finished before.
You did.
No, see,
You axe murdered the family like your brain told you to, and then you're like, wait, I should have actually done this in a way I could have gotten away with it.
Yeah. Oh
no,
well.
see, I did mine the same way. Like right now, my advanced reader copy is out, and I got the feedback back from my editor, so now I'm going to edit more. I mean, I haven't sold any of them; they're free, but I did the same way like you, Cassandra. I'm saying, okay, it's no right now. I'm going to put it out, get some reviews, and then I'm going to fix it later. As I start to get back to my editor and my other beta readers, and And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna pull the trigger, and then I'll find the bullet later, and I'll reshoot it again. So I'm like, I did the same way. So
Holy shit, you guys.
Like you said, Ashleigh, like we are our own masters. So that's one of the few perks we get as self-published authors. So we might as well roll with it
That's
and
true.
like use it.
That makes a lot of sense. I definitely did it the long way. I was like toiling and toiling for months and with the editor back and forth, and then finessing even more. And then I was like, okay, I read it like 20 times and I'm like, all right, I'm publishing it.
yeah, see, I was gonna do it that way too, but then I was like, okay, this version is close enough to what I'm trying to get it to. I'm gonna put it out because I'm trying to I'm trying to do the final version by my birthday, November 5th. So I'm like, I'm gonna put it out now. I'm trying to get some reviews now on the art. I'm not selling it. And then so I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go boom, right there, let's do it. And then, but see, at first I was like, okay, you should definitely wait until it's perfect. But then I'm like, I'm a perfectionist. I've already been working on it for like 5 years, so I'm gonna just, it's never gonna be perfect exactly. So I'm like, okay, if it's at about 80%, I'm gonna put it out now, and then I'll get it to 99%, and I'm not gonna touch it.
I wanted to say that one of the things I learned was that no matter how much we polish and no matter how much we perfectionize, we're still reading it as the author until we publish it. And only then, once we publish it, can we read it as a reader. And so it's no matter what, we're not going to see that stuff and fix it until after it's been published anyway. So why not?
But that's the proof copy. You get the proof copy. Like,
yeah, but see my author eyes are like, for me, yeah. I have well, I don't have paperback yet, but I guess for me, it doesn't really matter what way you do it, whether you do it to, as polished as much as possible, or you do it like me and do it a little bit early. But like, I believe every way is more than valid. I thought that I was gonna just, like, I'm not publishing until it's done. Then I'm like, how about I just get some preliminary reviews? How about I get some before it goes out? Because my author eyes are much too blind now to even be able to see it. Okay. Honestly, I did have an editor. I didn't even wait, but whatever. But I'm gonna. I just got the feedback from her just like yesterday. But I'm like, I'm just gonna go for it.
That's actually a good method now that I think about it. Like kind of putting the arc out into the world before and like not charging anything for it, and then just like marketing to a bunch of different random people. It's kind of like beta readers, basically at that point, and seeing how it takes and then making the changes along the way. So that's definitely a way to do it.
And then you have reviews going, you'll have reviews when you publish already, so you look even more respectable.
Exactly.
That's true, but unless you get bad reviews, then it'll tank my ratings. Unless the reviews are bad.
Dude, you're gonna get bad reviews no matter what.
That's true. That's
just part of life.
That's true, exactly. Someone's gonna be like, it's trash, it's garbage. Anyway, sorry, Cassandra, my bad.
Oh no, it's okay.
Oh yeah, I had another little question. You use a lot of, for Cassandra, you use a lot of specific song names and brand names, and like especially with her, like she's always in her iPod and she's listening to a specific song, and I almost had the desire to go find out what it was, I probably will at some point.
It would add to your experience reading the novel, I will say that much.
Is that why you chose to do that?
For a couple of reasons. The whole experience that I had in 2004 had its own soundtrack. I was listening to certain music while it was all happening to me, and so it wove itself in with my experience so well that I decided to include some of that music in the story as kind of a way of saying this is what the experience was like. But also, I think it's kind of, again, a snapshot of a time and place. It's Courtney being Courtney. It's letting the reader see exactly who that is and what her world smells like and sounds like. It's also, in a huge way, my clumsy attempt to give Courtney and her life a punk rock vibe. Courtney loves her music, and it's deeply foundational to the way that she sees the world and her place in it. Courtney may not belong to the time she's in, but she's definitely a girl of that time in a lot of ways. And I wanted the reader to be able to really feel the texture of those post 9/11 years. Again, I think the time and place Courtney tries to reach shines that much brighter once you really spent some time back in the early years of the War on Terror. Courtney and I are both millennials, practically the same age, so it was easy for me to make Courtney the sort of proverbial uber millennial that would make certain elements of the story really pop. I actually tried really hard to distill a punk rock and alternative vibe into the narrative. 95% of the time, I was listening to the Ataris or Newfound Glory while I was writing Courtney sequences. There were even times where I'd be listening to Nirvana, actually trying to distill the sound and energy of Smells Like Teen Spirit into Courtney's speech and syntax. I'm not even kidding. A lot of readers are shocked to learn that. I've had reviewers on Instagram or wherever make posts like, hey, I'm about to start reading Marry Everything and I've got all my jazz records ready to go. And I flinch because I know they're going in expecting a certain kind of vibe and it's just not going to be there. And sure enough, 4 stars or less. I think people tend to assume that if you've got a story that involves the 1920s, that it's going to be sparkling and jazzy, like glasses overflowing with champagne. The rest of the stories in the Flapper Covenant series might be, who knows, but Marry Everything is Courtney's origin story. And at the outset, she's a preppy punk rock girl. It hits people sideways. They expect Chic of Araby, not Sugar Hope.
Yeah, even the preppy punk rock is kind of, a paradox.
And yet there were at that exact time and place, there were girls like that. And they were a dying breed. They didn't last long, but it was a vibe for a little while. And so
yeah, I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I don't remember what I was doing. I was probably drinking in some bar. So
well, they called them like good Charlottes, or like girls that like listen to a certain and for a little while Hot Topic kind of became
oh yeah. That was earlier though too.
Maybe a little bit. Yes, probably starting in like 2001.
So that was just the trendy music at the time.
Sort of, yeah. But Courtney actually digs it. So she's not like just fake. She kind of looks fake, but she's not.
Yeah. Okay, so you're just trying to bring the reader into her world. I was thinking about that. Maybe you're trying to just characterize each girl's world, but then there wasn't any music really in the 20s. So I was like, okay, so we're just characterizing Courtney's world. But you said it's her origin story. So that makes sense then.
That's actually a good point. I probably should include some more music in this coming novel once the 20s sort of kind of opens up and sort of to set that scene too. So.
Well, it also made me think of capitalism a little bit too, because Courtney has all the brand name shit coming out, the iPod, the Abercrombie, Hollister. But in the 20s, they didn't have that as much. I mean, it was just kind of starting a little bit, like, Coca-Cola came out and whatnot, but they didn't have it nearly as much. So it was like, look what happened, with capitalism and brand.
This picture of like this capitalist dystopia we live in next to this more genuine kind of hometown world where people wouldn't have even thought of that.
Right, exactly. So, all right. Ashleigh, do you have any questions? Mine are done, I think.
So here's the first one. How did your writing process change during and after writing Marry Everything?
I answered this by saying, what writing process? And then parentheses, shrieks with laughter. No, actually, writing Marry Everything took me 5 years. That was because of undiagnosed ADHD, diagnosed with treatment-resistant depression, aphantasia, and countless other crap that turned a big job into an unthinkably monumental task. And I think it was in that process of turning haunting experiences into a real novel, a story with 3 acts, that I realized I didn't have a writing process. All I could do was try to create the beginnings of one and hope that later I'd be able to build on it. I'm facing the same difficulties with the sequel. My process involves sitting at my desk and working on a rough outline, and that tends to show me where all the holes in the story are. I spend my days trying to figure out really basic questions like, what's the inciting event? Hazel might do this or that, but why? And though at least I'm a little more educated now than I was during most of Mary, I can ask myself good questions now, like, are these characters being active protagonists? Or are they too passive? That sort of thing. The most infuriating thing, the most frustrating thing of all is that the entire 5-book series, question mark, seems to be filling itself in some rough way in the process of writing one book. ADHD is a hell of a thing.
Yeah, I think you asked me as well about the process too, Ashleigh.
Oh yeah, I did. Yep. I was gonna ask that later once it was your turn. All right. So, okay, let me answer this one. Okay. So this was another question that I had that I sent you. If you could time travel, what's one thing you change in the past that will completely shift your present and future?
This is a good one since it's really what the story is all about. I think I'd have been a lot more aggressive about cutting my parents out of my life as soon as I went to college, since they were the source of so many of my problems later on. Really, one of the main reasons I bombed out of college like I did. I'd have been a lot braver too and tried to care a lot less what people thought. But if I had the full system of the Flapperverse at my disposal, well, I'd probably want what Courtney wants, to go back to 1915, to have a family that loved me as much as mine hated me, and to start from there.
So you put a lot of personal stuff into your novel.
I always call it a memoir wrapped in fiction.
Yeah. Well, it's an effective way to get, to not only express those feelings, but to, cover them up and make them entertaining for other people as well. But at the same time, they actually like feel the pain with you, and
and then you can kind of turn them into a redemptive, kind of ultimately triumphant thing. You can transform it into a victory for yourself. Exactly. And that makes you feel so much better. It's a catharsis. It's like, no, this is going to end in victory for me, and it did end. It's like, so
yeah, exactly. It's like our dreams as a child, but as adult dreams, so we can end it this way. But if I could rewrite it, I would write it this way, and then with maybe with the fiction, it feels a bit safer, like I can have these true feelings, and I can say that there's Courtney versus Cassandra, or Sadie versus Cassandra, and these are probably just aspects of yourself that you can just sort of put in this world, this fiction world. That's definitely also what I do with fiction, because it is so difficult and the emotions are so raw and bleeding all the time. And so, if you can just say, it's not all of it is real, you can really just explore everything that you truly feel. And I like that.
Yeah,
I love that you did that.
Emotions don't make sense either, and past trauma doesn't make sense. So it's definitely a way of,
making sense of it.
Making sense of it, but also taking your power back, because when we're children, we're powerless.
Yeah.
So, or even, in certain ways as an adult, we're powerless. So it's one way to empower yourself, I feel.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions for Cassandra?
I just wanted to say, Ashleigh wrote one question, and if I could answer it, I promise I will shut up after this, but it's such a good question that I have to mention it. She said, who did you have to become to write your book?
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to say that I love this. I think this question made me fully realize I'm actually in the company of grownups. Young readers are great in their own ways, but only a real grown-up would think to ask something like this. So thank you. Because I really did have to become someone else to write this. In 2014, when I set out to write this novel once and for all, I immediately felt that Mary Everything was bigger than my ability to write it. Somehow I knew I'd have to grow into it. I knew I'd have to become a better storyteller, a better writer. I'd have to transcend genre, read widely and aimlessly, go places I'd never dreamed of going before, dangerous places. I'd have to find ancient wounds and cut them back open and hope there was a fountain of blood underneath for me to use as ink. I knew I'd have to find all my pain, find hopes I'd forgotten in childhood, and I might very well have to go a little bit insane. I knew there might be a cost, if I wanted to tell a truly great story and I was ready to offer what I needed to. I've devoured some of the finest works of literature ever written. Now that I've done that, I can't go back and find simple joy in good old fantasy or sci-fi anymore. My literary innocence is gone. I also think that I had to go a little bit insane to write Marry Everything. And just like my time slip experience, you come back with less of you than you started out with. But I think that's the price you pay if you set out to write something true, whether it's fiction or not.
Oh my gosh. I always said my book, because writing a book is kind of like having a child, you know? My book took my fucking like beauty away, like took my eyesight, took my, I have reflux now, like I have all these problems now, like it definitely took shift. You know how people say like their daughters take their beauty or the sons take their, you know, ambition or whatever. You've never heard that? Maybe.
Yeah, and you see it, like friends you have kids, suddenly it's like as the thing slides out of you, it takes everything with it, and it's gone. It's in the kid now, and never you never get it back.
You never get it back, right? So yeah, I feel that for sure. Let's see if I can do this right.
Oh yeah, that is much clearer.
Nailed it, much clearer.
All right, so Ashleigh, the first thing I wanted to ask you was what inspired this amazing dystopian, crazy sci-fi world?
All right. So, The Price of a Beating Heart, I just call it that, is a sci-fi dystopian romance. It has a couple characters. So what inspired this story was Trayvon Martin's murder. So after his murder, I was so heartbroken that I started writing this story in 2016, and so much of the emotions of this story are about definitely just based on me being like a black person in America and in this world. So all the emotions that you may feel, or maybe you won't feel, but if you do feel any emotions, that's where most of it comes from. So for me, like I am queer, I'm bisexual and non-binary, but that's most certainly not the first thing that's on my list. That's first black, and then female, and then queer, and then bipolar. So that was definitely the catalyst for the story. It was Trayvon Martin's murder, and so that's the inspiration for it.
That story, I was glued to the TV that whole time. I was in Florida at the time, and my heart is, a piece of my heart will never come back after what happened with that whole entire thing. So that inspired your story. That's amazing.
Yes. Well, of course. I mean, that's the most recent, not the most recent, but one of the more recent horrific things that happened in the black, against the black community. So it's more of like, for this story, the emotions are definitely from right from the beginning, 400 years ago, many centuries. So that's where much of the emotions in the story are from. It's from my experience as a black person. And I don't speak for every black person, but for my own self, yes.
I just wanted to say that it's crazy how current events, and I will never understand what it feels like to be black, I admit. And I will never understand what racism, the institutionalized racism of the US feels like. But I can speak as a queer person and say that it's funny how current events hurt so deeply that they can trigger an entire novel to be written. That they can affect you so deeply that you have the pain that you need to then express in a novel. So that at least I understand, and it's really crazy how that works.
Well, plus I would think there is this pain, right? And what happens in the media sometimes kind of brings the poison up to the surface, you know? But yeah.
for me, it's never not there. So it's not like there's nowhere to bring it up from. It's always there. It's always, it's always there. So it's never like, there's no well to pull up first, it's always there. Like for instance, some people may say was this book healing or cathartic for me? And the answer is neither, because in order to heal or have catharsis, you must have the trigger stop. So, but because the trigger never has actually stopped, it's impossible for me as a Black person to have healed or to have any catharsis. So it's neither of those things. It's just an exploration of how it feels for me as a Black person, where it feels as if the trauma will never stop, and that I will die and it will stop, and I will fight and I will die and it won't stop. I mean, we have been fighting for centuries, many hundreds of years, and this is where we are. And we have this notion that progress has gone so far, and I ask the question, has it really? So for me, it's definitely any emotions that you may feel is tied to this experience specifically. Just being born as a Black person and having the feeling that the Blackness is that it doesn't matter what you do, who you are, it doesn't matter any of that, because the Blackness is already the problem. The Blackness is already the sin. The Blackness, you were born wrong. So there's nothing you can do. You can never become right. And I don't mean that as in like I love being Black, but I mean in my society, and that is not just America, but in the entire world. So that's for me what it feels like, and that's where this book was born. That's what inspired it. I guess my life, just being born in this society where Black is wrong, though Black is not wrong in and of itself.
That's so powerful that I don't even have I feel like I don't even have words right now, because
I don't have a coherent response. I'm just going to smile and nod at you because again, I think my whiteness makes me, in conversations like these, it makes me mute. It is so painful, and I realize I am part of the problem, and being born white, I am part of the problem. Being born white, I am automatically racist, and all I can do is wake up every morning and say, what can I do today to be better? That's all I can do. I cannot alleviate a half a millennium of shame and hurt and degradation. And when I hear truth like that, when I hear what it feels like, all I can do is smile and nod, because in the end, I'm part of that problem. And and so are my ancestors. And so all I can do is listen to you and hope that reading your story, connecting with that truth, connecting with that vein that you tap into, can help me be a little better tomorrow when I wake up. That's all I can do. But also thank you for tapping into that pain and sharing it with us, because otherwise, if you don't make us uncomfortable, that problem will never go away for your descendants, for anyone's descendants. It is right that you make us uncomfortable. And I'm glad that you're doing that.
I mean, I didn't feel uncomfortable. I just felt like I don't know, I have no words. Like, I'm just gonna listen. Like, it just hits my emotions a lot. So and it's a lot of different emotions. So I think the important thing is that we just listen, and your story, thinking about it in that way, just makes it, that much more powerful, in my opinion. And maybe I have another question, but I'm gonna wait until after you finish your passage. So should we talk about this more, or like what should we get?
I can go ahead and read it.
Okay.
The Price of a Beating Heart is a far future world. It takes place on Earth. It's 400 years into the future, and so things have changed a great deal. This is a dystopian um, novel, and admittedly, I can't tell you too much because there's a lot of things that need to stay hidden as you start to read it. But I will just let you know that there is a female main character who has a husband, and in this world, much of the oppression and much of the inequalities is based on the natural abilities of 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 the people. So there are two classes of people in this world. There are the anomalies and the commons. And the world is maybe 98% common, that's common with capital C, and then like 2% anomalies. So anomalies are are very much the people who are given all the prestige because they have a certain ability that is almost extinct. So with that said, I think I've said it enough. It's in North America, and the main character is a female who's about 30 years old. I walk into the toilet room 5 minutes until 6 morn and undress slowly. James of the Pillars has put a chair under the shower head. I sit slowly, pull off my prosthesis, and gently massage the deep bruises under it. Pain shoots through my belly and into my chest. My breasts have grown 3 sizes and hang low. I hug them, grateful they are with me and not elsewhere. No, no more. I shake my head of these thoughts. Actually, let me just pause for a second. So this part is a little bit cut, so it may sound a bit funny. I've cut a bit out just to not give away some of the plot. 100 years ago, cured acid was discovered. Trust us, it was much needed. Do not forget to take yours. Your favorite show today in the past. The water cascades down my body, warm enough to be comfortable. I clean myself in 30 seconds so that I can enjoy the remaining 3 minutes. I close my eyes. The chair under me disappears and I drift off into the deep recesses of my mind. James of the Pillars and I are well off. James of the Pillars is her husband. We live in a home at the top of Urban, and he only eats dirt when he wants, as he does like the taste. My prosthesis is flesh covered, flexible, and I walk with ease. I touch my stomach, it is flat. My husband holds our infant. He grasps my finger tightly with his tiny hand. I kiss his forehead and twirl his soft curls around my finger. We go to ancient dreams regularly to enjoy the world of centuries ago. I see the dining room's magnificence again. Cream-colored walls with gold trim, intricate arched doorways and windows, a chandelier sparkling in the center of the room. Splashes of light hit our circular tables, which are covered in a black cloth with one gold stripe. I have on semi-glossy black heels with my dress. I am there, and I am one of them, a citizen of Urban. A shock of hope slams my body. The water has gone off. I look around. For a moment, my eyes are filled with a world of excess. The walls are a freshly painted cream color, and our home is nothing more than a place to sleep, eat, and cheer. It is not a symbol of hope. I want to be in Urban more than anywhere. I want to be worthy. When my lips tremble, my vision fades. I see my home in Lower Valley 7, cracked walls, thick synth glass that blocks out my neighbors, cold wind, a tiny toilet, and dingy floors. It is too much of too little. Melancholy creeps in as it always does on double water activation day and sets its weight on me. The droplets of water cool on my skin, raising goosebumps on every inch of my body. I detest this life from one another. And then I hear it, humming, perfect pitch. James of the Pillars' tone is deep, indescribably handsome, passionate, and competent. An immensely gifted anomaly, he hums an unfamiliar song, a new song, complicated with multiple tones dipping, sliding, and jumping into one another. We will have that better life. He is the key to Urban. I dress, then acquire paper and pen. In our room, I write the notes of his humming on the small table. The music swirls inside of me. It fills my brain and lifts all of the sorrow from my heart. I write quickly, capturing every note my husband offers. Soon, he stops humming, but I still hear it in my head. I have fallen behind. I write faster. I do not want to forget the complex melodies far more skilled than Antoine of the Glades. When I have written all I can remember, I fold the paper and tuck all but one page in the left pocket of my dress. In my other pocket, I leave the first page. My love? I turn around. James of the Pillars' face lights in pleasant surprise and darkens in guilt at the same rate. In his hands are 2 plates. A small circular white cake with boiled clear juice sweet sauce leaves a sense of wealth in the air. On top of my cake are clumsy designs. I sniff deeply. Well made. I sit on our sofa and hold my hand out for the plate. James of the Pillars hands it to me. He positions a pillow behind me and I lean back comfortable. Many thanks. He sits at the other end of the couch. We smile at one another, playing a silent game where we mirror each other's movements. The game goes slowly, and I do not learn who wins. Right before our last fight, he asks, "What do you have in your pocket, my love?" He did see me. Nothing of importance. His gaze narrows on my pocket, and his face hardens a little. May I see? No, it is my concern. I do not believe it is. What do you plan to do with your concern? I submit it to the dome. He sets his plate down, then comes closer and puts his hand out. I turn away, but he is faster. James of the Pillars grazes my cough for the first time and hits his hand on the sofa's arm. He shakes the pain away, then pulls a sheaf of pages from my pocket, skims them, and rips them. My husband does not scatter them on the floor, as he knows I would put them back together. He motions to my other pocket. His look is hard, is trusting. But when I shake my head, he looks away. I will never submit anything. To submit these pages would doom me to a misery I have not experienced. He picks up his plate. It trembles in his hand. I understand. You do not. The price is too high. It always is.
That was excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was a great scene.
The passage was really, really powerful. And right from the outset, I felt things. I felt imprisoned. I felt tense. I felt dirty. I felt horrible. It was unpleasant. And I mean, that led to all the questions that I have. I'm going to let, as Vivian's the host, I'm going to let her
go.
Oh, hey, I wanted to actually ask you, I said, ouch, with just a sentence or two, you conjure a cold, miserable, inescapable dystopia right there at the beginning of your earliest passages. More than that, you make it truly alien. You manage to put the reader in a distant future where any resemblance to our own world or culture is passing at best. You had to go far from home and step partly outside of our paradigm in order to do that. How did you do it? How did you manage to create another culture, one that doesn't bear any resemblance to any modern culture, so effectively?
Okay. So for me, like, how did I do it? Many years of thinking. So definitely, actually, the world is based off a lot of our own world. Many of both the horrors and the human condition is based on our own present day and past things that have happened in our real world. So really for me, it was just definitely a weaving of my own imagination with real life atrocities in the world. While the world feels alien, it's as is usually the case with science fiction. It's more just an extreme version of things that have already happened, at least in my sci-fi world. So that's what I did. It took a lot of research. It took a lot of what happened here, what happened here, what happened here, and just bumping it up a little bit more to the extreme to truly give you that claustrophobic, inescapable world, where you will fight, you will fight and they will fight, but that doesn't mean, but whether or not they have a good ending is they don't know, just like we don't know. So that's really how I crafted it, and it just took a lot of tweaking, a lot of just really going deep into myself, into what I truly felt and believed about the world. And that's how I created the world as it is. But having said that, it is being edited more to become even better. This is just the advanced copy.
Oh, it's pretty good where it is right now.
Yeah, for real. You definitely conjured a real vibe and a real atmosphere. So anyway, sorry.
No, absolutely. Don't be sorry. to me, the atmosphere is just straight up oppression, right? Whether that's, by the society that she's living in or by the resources that she has. There's also seems to be some oppression from, her husband. There's some kind of strain there that I can't quite put my finger on. And my question was, because it made me think of, because I did read some of the beginning of your arc as well, but I don't know where this falls in it. This is probably in the beginning?
Yeah, this is in the beginning. Yep.
Is this in the
I believe this is
chapter?
in this. I believe it's in the second chapter. Let me see. It is. Yeah, it's in the second chapter at the close to the end. So this is very, very much early because a lot more things happen after this chapter, which I didn't want to give away.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I only read the first chapter, and then obviously this passage. And yeah, just the fact that the suppression and just the writing itself that you put on the page is just, it's sparse, but it's exhausted, it's like terse, but it's just, it just gives this overall tone of just being weighed down, even though it's short sentences. And I don't even know how you do this, but it's these short sentences which you would think would go quickly, would read quickly, but it's like just the tone, something about it is just weighed down. It's
bleak.
permeating. Bleak, permeating through the whole thing. And so I just felt oppressed and, like you said, imprisoned reading it. And then to learn that, she has part of her leg is missing, and he can't even whistle a song without, something could happen to his song. Something with this place called the Dome. And reading the first chapter, I learned that they use blood as currency. And it just had me thinking, like, their oppression and their society is literally just taking their, like, pieces of their body away. Like, it's just taking and taking and taking. And is that kind of, I just want to know, like, how is that, what you, was that intentional? um was that just how you saw the world? Like, can you explain, like, what the process was, or like talk about the commentary of that? Like, what were you trying to say with that?
Okay. So definitely, I worked really hard to try and get certain themes and messages across. So I do believe I need to be more explicit. Anyway, so definitely, I really wanted to make it so these characters, these people, well, first off, I wanted to make sure that they were very human. I wanted to I wanted to try and make sure that they were very nuanced. We could see them being good and bad. And we weren't entirely sure if they're good or bad. But as far as the taking, as far as making them into products, that was based on like our own capitalist society, based that on how we have this notion that we are, that we are these individuals, that we matter, but then in our same capitalist society, that it's also that we are products. We are tools for our society. But to be more specific, in the case of Black people, that in our case we are the tools for other people's success. And that's just my point of view, which we are sometimes. I don't mean that we are naturally, but that sometimes, that like in this world, that in this the broader sense, like, who owns us? Do we own us, or does our society own us? And so that's one of the big questions in this world: who owns the body? Who owns the mind? Who owns the soul? Who owns the spirit? If they take it away, how, how do you keep anything remaining? How do you keep going when your society takes it all away? And but see, I have to emphasize this is not a story of misery and rejection. And I'm sorry, it is, but the ultimate goal is for hope, to keep going. So the biggest caveat, the biggest emotion in this story is actually love. So it's all about continuing to fight, continuing to go on, even when you're just essentially being like Harry Potter, the mentor, your whole life away, and knowing that the ending will not be good for you, and that's or it might be good, but let's assume that it wasn't. That you just have to keep going on, knowing that the ending will be what it has always been. So that's kind of what I was going on with here. So this is a story of love. It's a story of hope. It's just that for me, it is helpful for me to make a world overtly worse than ours. For me to try and give some notion that our world is not as bad as it is, and it is. But if you put the characters in an even worse world, and I infuse my own emotions in them, it makes me feel more hopeful about our world. So that's some of the couple of the messages that I was trying to put in this.
I just wanted to say that I love that you mentioned capitalism and in the same conversation as blood being a currency, in the sense that I love that metaphor. I love what it says, that in a capitalist dystopia, even like ours, and I know it's so much worse in your story, but that when you are,
Is it though?
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, when you are disadvantaged, your body then becomes the only currency you have, in whatever form that takes, whether that be sex work, whether that be selling your plasma and your blood, to be in a situation where the situation your main character, it feels that she's in the beginning, that if you don't have, if you're at the bottom and you don't have anything, it feels like there are people still saying to you, well, you've got your body, you can sell parts of yourself. And that bleakness is something I see mirrored in my own experiences in our society. So I really appreciated that. I think that's really cool.
Well, you opened it up perfectly. I mean, I saw just this, I don't know if this is how you saw it, but I was seeing kind of like a tower, like the people are so small, and I saw everything in blue, like blue and black, almost like an anime or something. And I mean, it's just opening it up that the society is literally taking their blood, and that and it was just perfect. It was a perfect opener, and it was bleak, but I assume there's love and hope later.
Yeah, she mentions urban right away, that there's this goal, there's something higher. I deserve urban. I deserve, she says what she deserves and what she feels like she should have, and that there is a better life. So yeah, there's that too.
But she wants to be worthy at the same time. So she doesn't feel worthy for some reason. And like her blood wasn't good enough at the restaurant they were at in the first chapter. That says a lot about our society, that I think it's a lot like our society, actually. It's more blatant, but I mean, shit, people work, they lose limbs, and their work barely pays them off. Like my dad worked in the Navy forever. He's got back problems, veterans benefits don't pay for everything about that. So there's just, we give ourselves to this system, and we're trying to, a lot of people are trying to rise in the system, and it's just like, how much left of you will you have once you get to urban, or a place like that?
What do you have left that society can take? Because it like, what do you have left to give once you don't have anything?
And that's what you were saying, like, who owns what? You know, who owns what and who can make money off of what, you know? And that actually brings me to my other question, because you do have this moment of hope in her dream, in the narrator's dream. And she's talking about this other house with the cream walls, you know, the baby's in his arms, her husband's arms, and he's twirling his finger around the little curls. Like, I just saw that so vividly. And it's the new house is not a home of hope. It's not a house of hope. And yet she's in this like dingy, cold, dark, you know, bathroom with this cold water down on her. And there doesn't seem to be any hope there either. So I wanted to know, like, what are you trying to say about hope? Is she suggesting that the what is it called, Lower Valley 7, that's a symbol of hope, but the dream house is not? So I thought that was fascinating. So can you explain that a little more?
Yeah. So in this world, so if she were to get there, she would no longer need the hope that she needs to try and create every second of her life, because she's no longer in that place. Because so currently her home, like for instance, this is later in the book, but they paint their homes in bright colors, to symbolize hope, so they don't forget to have hope, to make hope, to create hope, to remember to be hopeful. So, but if she were to get there, then she would no longer have to constantly manufacture hope. She no longer have to find that little bit in her, in her heart where it is. So so that's kind of what it was. Like, the home is not hope in and of itself, but it's something where she can try and make a life with her husband. So it's something more than nothing for her.
What I was thinking, what are you trying to say about hope? Like, do you have any commentary on that? Or
So it was more like that the brightness is just a reminder, because hope can be so easily lost. And so that's more of what I was trying to say about hope in regards to hope.
it made me think of how hope is sometimes literally all you have in these oppressed societies. Or I didn't know about the paint on the outside, but that's even more brilliant, actually. Because it's almost like you're almost like forcing the hope on everybody, like, you've got to remember, and I thought that was a nice touch and a nice little commentary on what we're going through. And it's perfect. So nice
I guess,
job.
yeah. I guess for me, it was more like it wasn't forcing it. It was more like a solidarity hope. It
Yeah.
was more like a community hope, not like I'm forcing it on you. I'm trying to remind you. We're trying to remind each other, kind of thing.
A collective reminder that we're alive and there's always something to hope for, essentially, right? Like, I'm guessing.
See, I guess I see it in a even bleaker way, like, like, oh, you're fucking hope, but that's very cynical, but I guess that was the vibe I was getting. That's not how I feel, as a person, but I was getting that vibe that, like, even the hope is like,
Gilded and peeling, maybe a little, like, is what I got from it
it's just
personally.
like pushed on you, like, oh, we take your blood, but here's this hope,
yeah, we're going to give you just this little bit of hope. That should be good enough for you, and you're
Right.
lucky we're giving you that. Like,
Exactly. Yes, that's how I
Mhm.
was thinking about it. So
Yeah, yeah. See, I guess in that case, it's more of external to internal. When I'm hope I'm talking about, it's more of the internal hope within the people of Valley versus like from the dome to Valley. So like from the dome to valley, it's yeah, here's a little breadcrumb, you know, even though their lives are miserable. But internally, it's more like internally. I had more of the notion of it's a solidarity of hope, you know, that we must remind each other that there is good, that we must remain faithful, and we must remain hopeful that you know that things will either get better or stay the same, or maybe they'll get worse. But you know, hope you can't take that away, you know, from people. You can only put them through challenges and all these things.
Cassandra, do you have any other questions?
I had another question written down. I'm going to skip number 3 because I think we've kind of discussed that a bit. But my second question was, who and what influenced your world, your voice, your tone, your imagery, your craft? Part of me wonders if she sees 1984 in your work, but then I bat it away. The price of a beating heart makes the world of 1984 feel downright inviting. Your world and culture feel more alien than the Hunger Games or even Horizon Zero Dawn. I think I just asked, what influences did you draw on to create this culture? And how long did you spend building this world before seriously setting pen to manuscript to make it a reality?
And that kind of goes into my question. Like I just had a couple of questions as you were reading, and you mentioned Trayvon Martin, and we know it's a dystopian sci-fi. And I just like piggybacking off of her question, how did you mix the sci-fi with that emotional pain from Trayvon Martin? Like, how did those two come together to birth this novel?
Okay.
What influence?
Okay. So, all right. So, what influenced this question? 1984, most certainly. That was the first dystopian I ever read, and so that one really just shaped my whole love for dystopian sci-fi. That is definitely a big influence on not so much the book per se, but just writing sci-fi in general. Now there are elements of it. So if you are seeing this 1994, it is because that's definitely an influence. Um, um, Hunger Games, and I haven't read Horizon Dawn. I haven't read that one.
Yeah, it's a video game. I wasn't sure if you had played it, if like, you know, because it's like this, it's like a post dystopian. It's like the world goes to shit and blows up, and then 1,000 years goes by, and it's this alien kind of hunter-gatherer tribal world. It's really interesting, and I think you'd love it. But so yeah.
I'll write it down.
You in the video games.
Yeah, me with my video games.
And a billion other people in the world.
Oh yeah, definitely. So what influenced it was definitely 1984 sci-fi. A lot of just definitely 1984 is most of the biggest one. The ending to that book really just showed me that there can be different endings. You know, it doesn't always have to be a certain type of ending. The author can write it as they want. Other influences were, let me see. I've been writing for a while now. I guess for me, I get influences from anything, inanimate objects, people. It doesn't really matter. Anything can be an inspiration for me. So anything can just stoke my curiosity. This world specifically, I mean, again, it was definitely like a lot of different horrific things: Holocaust, slavery, American slavery, the apartheid, the A-bomb, all of that stuff kind of influenced the world and most certainly influenced the dystopian aspect because I just pushed it to the extreme. Who influenced it? Honestly, many different authors, especially Neil Shusterman, like his Unwind series, especially the first book. I thought it was absolutely amazing. I love his writing. He's a big inspiration of mine. So is N.K. Jemisin. So is the author of 1984, and whose name I forgot. Anyway, so how long did it take me to
Orwell, right?
The world? Yep, George Orwell. How long did it take me to create the world? Before I set pen to paper, let's see. That was I'd written the entire manuscript in 2016, so probably a couple of months. But to actually get it polished with many years to really get everything fully done. So about 4 or 5 years on and off. How did I do the sci-fi with the pain? So for me, there are different types of creativity. There is sci-fi, the what if creativity, the kind of future oriented creativity, but then the emotion of creativity, that, well, that comes from my world and my own interpretation of it. So I just combined the two, the what if future oriented creativity with my own emotional creativity, because so for me they are separate. The sci-fi is one aspect, and the pain is more related to the characters. So it's their pain. How can I how can I distill my own pain or trauma or misery and put it into this book and convey it through words so you can feel it. So that's what it is. There are two different types of creativities for me. Sci-fi is very different than the pain or trauma is. It's mostly just how can I show you how can I show you how horrific their world is, while also giving you a notion of nonchalance with the world, while also giving you their immense hope, that this is the world they live in. There is no going outside to arena, there is no going anywhere else. This is just their life and that's it. So that's one reason why this book it doesn't like it never takes you out of the world. It's just like this is the day to day. And so you never get that notion of like they're gonna run away, never get the notion that they're gonna go and fight. I mean they do fight, but there's never the notion that they can just leave. They can just go run away. Run away to where? Where go where? All they have to do is say, how can we find hope? How can we love? How can we continue to love? So, it's definitely, there's nowhere to go. And that's mostly how I did that. It's just different types of creativity.
I can't wait to read this. Like, it just seems so powerful. And honestly, the knowing like now, because I was thinking about oppression in general, societal oppression. I was thinking about capitalism actually more than anything because that you had the media sound bite in there, the media telling them about the acid, and how, oh, take yours today, blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh my God, it's fucking, capitalism 101, like evil capitalism 101 right there.
That's a large aspect of the world too. There's different aspects of the world. It is. There are many different aspects. So capitalism is a big one in the world. So definitely.
Yeah, but the tone and just what I was seeing in my head from the first sentence, like Cassandra said, like literally from the first, just something, it just feels so heavy and everything. And now that I know that it's about your experience as a Black woman, it just makes it that much more powerful. And I feel like you really conveyed that. Like you really conveyed that to the reader, in my opinion. You were just saying you have some more to do.
You did, for me, you did the most important thing, which was putting me in that world and giving me no choice but to feel what you feel. And that is absolutely, that is not something that very many authors can ever pull off or even try. Like, so that's so amazing.
Like there are traditionally published books out there that don't do that shit. At least
no, they don't even come close, a lot of them. And I think that's traditional publishing. I think people get uncomfortable with too much emotion.
Yeah.
And so,
I felt swallowed by this world. And, obviously, like Cassandra was saying, like, we don't know what it's like to be Black, and if it feels anything like that, you hit the nail on the head. And I can't wait to finish it. Honestly, I can't wait to see how these people burn through this, like, get through it and just run through it. And nice job.
Excellent job. Yeah.
Excellent job. I do have one more quick question, but do you have anything to say about that, Ashleigh? Or
yeah. See, I For me, I would have never really explained so much and what came upon it, because I don't want it to be per se in that. I don't want that to be the. I do, but I don't want it to be the thing that you're thinking about as you read it. I'm explaining to you now because I'm here, but for my own readers, I would have never told them like what inspired it so much. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So they can come into it fresh, so that they don't constantly think like. In reality, it is based on many characteristics of our world and my experiences, but being Black is one of the ones that influence much of the emotional components of it. So it so yes. So
I have to ask you
what it was.
I have to ask why, because I have also battled with my own, like, do I want people to know that's what I was trying to do? Because you don't really want to shape the story for the reader, but at the same time, if that's where you were coming from as an author, there's nothing, reading it, I just saw it as straight up oppression, and they're in a like hard world and they're stuck, and it's
Exactly. Yeah.
very scary. It's terrifying.
I'm more than comfortable with saying that it is because of my Black experience, my experience as a Black person. That's not quite what it is. What I really mean is that I
You
just
don't want to influence the reader.
I don't want to influence the reader too much. I don't want them to be thinking. I do want them to come at it kind of fresh. But on the other hand, I fully intended to come here and say that is exactly what influenced much of the emotional landscape of the book.
I think it's got enough to it that it's not screaming, you know, this is what it's like to live as a Black person, at all. So the fact that you mentioned it just took it to another level for me personally.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been my initial takeaway from it at all. Like, she's trying to make a statement about identity or race at all. No, when I first picked it up, it was like, oh, this is a really shitty world. But she describes it really well, so I'm really intrigued. That was immediately what I took from it right away. But like Vivian said, like, hearing that these are your feelings distilled and concentrated makes me more interested in it, makes me, okay, like, this is truth. So yeah, absolutely, I want to read more.
Truth with a capital T, like,
yeah, exactly.
Truth bomb.
I'm not saying that it's not based on racism, but it is, right? That's not what I'm saying. It's just that there are many elements in it. So it's most certainly a message about race, but also about capitalism, but also about queerness, but also about
there's more to
about,
it.
Exactly. There's more to it. There's a wide many identities. Exactly.
All right. Fantastic job. Just fucking fantastic. I love it. I do have one quick little question.
Sure.
I was just, because I was a little, obviously I'm probably gonna have to, figure it out once I read it, but with the music thing, she's writing down the music that he's humming, and he's kind of accusing her of almost betrayal, I felt. Do they not trust each other? Like, what's going on?
There are some things. There are things happening. So, they don't see that they don't, but they do. So no, he doesn't, because she's done this before. So he's definitely wary of her. So yeah, there is strain, there is conflict in their relationship. So just like any relationship, it can get pretty messy with those two.
Absolutely.
My takeaway was that mistrust is endemic in this society. My takeaway was that mistrust is so pervasive that your spouse or your partner, like, the first thing you think when you see them writing down, like, what are you writing? Why are you writing that? Like, are you going to turn me in? Are you going to betray me? So, like, it added for me another level to the dystopian sort of fear and oppression and terror that you'd conjured.
And how people, like, when people that are so oppressed, they could turn on each other, the closest people to them, sometimes because of fear, you know?
Well, in this case, with their relationship, that's not how it works. They're not turning on each other. They are very much in love with each other. They're supportive of each other. This isn't about them being oppressed and turning on one another. So in this case, it's not at all.
Well, that's good, but when we're only reading that part, it kind of it can go
Exactly.
anywhere, you
You're like, she's up to something.
Yeah.
Exactly. She is up to something, just to be clear.
I can tell she's up to something because she's just obsessed. Oh my goodness. And her saying she wanted to be worthy, like, that just killed me, honestly. Like, bitch, you're fucking worthy now. Fuck them. You know? Like, that's what
And like her saying that means on some level she knows she's worthy of Urban. On some level, to want to be worthy knows that you deserve it, but she still has a lot of character growth ahead of her before she can just come right out and say, you know what, fuckers, like I should have this. Like, so she's not nearly at that part yet. And you can see that being part of her journey is in realizing her own worthiness.
Yes. Yes. I got that too. Like, we got a hole to fill here, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I can't wait to suffer so exquisitely in this horrible but beautifully created world that I'm going to expose myself to.
But the suffering, I think the suffering is so bad because it's going to be so beautiful at some point, you know? There's got to be a balance.
Yeah.
If there's not, we're just going to be straight suffering the whole time, and that's, I mean, hey, that might happen.
But like Ashleigh said, it's going, there's going to be some triumphant. I like, it's eventually going to be triumphant. That's the whole arc of,
Right.
of her journey is to find redemption in all this filth.